EV sales are dying. No, wait, surging. Wait, it depends on the market. It turns out it is an upward swing, but not everywhere and not always consistently. And some of the bigger names that you would expect to be doing well on the gasoline side are struggling. So we're going to look at some different stories from around the world, try to add a bit of perspective. And when I say we, I mean me and Mark from the Tesla Life, not just me and my tapeworm, although my tapeworm is here as well. I'm Brian. Welcome to Future Ozza. Yeah. One time my grandma said, "Oh, we think this." And my grandpa said, "Who's we, Francis? Are you pregnant?" So, miss you, Ray. Miss you, Grandpa Ray. He was a Pearl Harbor survivor. And I didn't know this, but when he passed, the paper in Hawaii does a whole write-up for you. You go out, they'll do your 21 gun salute at the monument, and it's a very touching, very brief ceremony. And the newspaper brings out a write-up on the survivor to read out loud at the thing. Very touching. Very touching. Not many more of those to go, I think. Very few, I think. So, why don't we talk about something a little less upbeat? EV sales, including hybrids, surge for auto giants not named Tesla. Oh, investors.com, you're so salty. GM and Ford Friday reported robust U.S. auto sales. GM more than doubled EV sales for the full year, while Tesla suffered a sales decline. That 1% suffering, it really breaks me, you know. I don't think it's an error. I think it's a good thing this video can't be played because I wasn't going to let you. Toyota posted declining U.S. vehicle sales, but marked an EV sales milestone, including hybrids. Hyundai, which trades over the counter, and Honda saw robust hybrid and EV sales, spearheading their overall sales growth. Have you heard this good news? Oh, great. Yes, definitely pop that up. Thank you. Have you heard this great news that GM and Ford are selling so many EVs?
Yes, I have heard. But the problem is you're not looking at the whole picture. Yes.
No, I'm not. I'm looking only at they left the factory and someone cut me a check. Isn't that a sale?
No, it's not.
Oh,
well, it is for some people.
It is for my accountant.
Yeah, but it is a questionable sale because, of course, that's going to a dealership. The dealership is holding it on their lots for how long? 60, 90, 120 days. It's going to sit there, and it's the dealership is paying GM a fee to hold those on the lot. And eventually, if they're not sold, guess what? They come back or they're discounted wildly. Mm-hmm. So there's a game being played between the manufacturer and the dealerships, and this is how they get to play with the numbers a bit.
Now, I don't know who finances the flooring for new car dealers. I would not be surprised if GM through GMAC Financial covers the flooring, but these dealers may be paying 1% a month to hold a car. I've seen companies paying as high as 2%. I don't think in this rate environment there are very many doing that. But paying even 1% a month means if you sit there for a year, that car needs to sell for 12% more than if you'd have just moved it when it got in. I've had people tell me that I said, this is channel stuffing. They are counting them as sales because they are sales, because they did receive the money from the dealer, even though they are not customer sales. And we're seeing swelling inventory of some of these models. And they said, "Oh, that's illegal." I said, it's not. It's a common accounting practice. It is how these dealerships have operated in conjunction with the manufacturer forever. He said, "Nope, I asked Grok. Don't do that. Don't do that." That's Grok does not yet have a doctorate in anything. I saw a great post. Someone shared pictures of a recipe. Their mom said, "Hey, I saw this cool cookie recipe. Try it out." And he didn't think twice, just made it. And it was an AI generated recipe. And those are not cookies. That's not what a cookie looks like. So I'm sure it looked like a real recipe to a robot and tasted like a cookie to a robot. But that's great. Next big story here. Strong performance in China defied Tesla's 2024 global sales downturn. Even though Tesla sales in China, its second largest markets, were up in 2024, it wasn't up enough to make for sliding in sales elsewhere. So yeah, it's over in China, Mark. Haven't you heard? Competition isn't just coming, it is here. They're making better cars. They're making more cars. Tesla still had an all-time sales record in China.
Obviously, they're ahead of the pack here. They continue to keep up with the Joneses, because what's happening here is that there is a price war still happening in China. People are battling for market share. Companies are battling for market share, and Tesla is one of those companies. So they've got to keep up with them, because, of course, China, all these other state-run and sponsored companies, they are continuing the fight. They are continuing to raise the bar, and Tesla has to keep up with them in order in order to stay alive. You need to keep up with everybody.
It is still a premium. It is a brand that people want to have. It is an aspirational product. And keeping up with the Who's?
The Joneses.
No, I meant the Who's. That's a very common Chinese name. Reuters notes that Tesla sales in the People's Republic went up 8.8% for the year. That is good, man. That is good. So the sales story isn't over everywhere, but we may have some perspective. Electric car sales hit a record high in 2024 in the UK, but fall short of government targets. So the government's got a very ambitious target. And despite not hitting it, they hit 19.6% of all new cars. They were hoping for 22%. That's still great.
I gotta say that's really good. Like governments always push beyond what they believe they're going to get. They have aspirational goals, because of course they're trying to dictate to others that this is where we're heading. This is where we're going to be in this year and next year and the year after. And they're painting a picture, and they're usually wrong, and they're usually overshoot the mark of what actually happens. But man, close to 20%, that is excellent for the UK.
I'm with you 100%. I think it's fantastic. I've had a couple shows recently with Will from Tesla Jigsaw. He's brings some great perspective from the UK, from firsthand experience, from being in the market. They're catching on. They've got a lot of variety. They've got models spanning a number of form factors and market segments. It's great. EV sales slump, growth slump of 24 was overblown. Now let's do 2025. Saw on Clean Technica. I've had some great experience with their coverage. Paul Foss is one of their writers. Got to meet him last year at CES, and since then, I find their coverage to be pretty neutral, pretty reasonable. Great EV sales slump is a matter of history. So by the numbers, Tesla still dominates global EV sales. Now, BYD may have surpassed them, but BYD sells almost exclusively in one market. And if you look at their Germany sales, I think they're down to dozens, if not hundreds, because the import tariffs are having the desired effect, I guess you could say. So 2024 was a pretty good year, with some exceptions. Associated Press and many others noted that Tesla worldwide sales was just 1.79 million, 1% below the previous year's 1.81. Unfortunate, you gotta sell all the cars, not just most of the cars. And like you pointed out, a lot of other manufacturers will stuff the dealers full of vehicles just to hit targets. And Tesla actually drew down inventory this quarter, reversing a trend that we'd seen for a number of consecutive quarters. So yeah, and Tesla's got some hopefully new models coming out. Before we get on to the next story, I would ask you and all of you in the comments, what do you think the vehicle that will be more affordable, that will be built on the same line as the 3 and Y is going to be? What's your prediction on that?
That's a tough one. How are they going to make a vehicle a little bit cheaper? Well, quite a bit cheaper, actually. We're talking about $5,000 drop in price. How are they going to do that and still use the utility of the existing lines? You could eliminate some things. I think back about the Mexican introduced car where they got rid of the sunroof, they got rid of some of the materials, they got rid of the back display. Yeah, you could take all those things out of it, but you're not going to recoup 5 grand out of a car with just that. So is it going to be a different size? Are they going to use some of the same quarter panels? Others they don't. It's a real mixed bag. I'm excited to see what's going to happen this year.
Me too. Here's my theory. This, the front of a Model 3 or Y, the back is a hatchback. See what I mean there?
Yeah.
This is something that's reasonably commonly done in Europe, where they'll have, it's still a great car. It's just a little bit smaller. But I do think that there's a lot of, the easiest place to be would be the Mexico edition Model 3, which is what they made in Shanghai, which just had cloth seats instead of pleather. It had one infotainment instead of two. It had 0 subwoofers instead of 2. There's a lot of ways you can trim the cost without going too far. So I think all of that is.
And the other thing is that Tesla has pretty healthy margins when it comes to the sale of their cars anyways, whereas other automobile manufacturers have a very low margin. If you can push up the volume, you can afford to drop your profit a few points down because you're going to make it up in volume. And that's certainly what a lower price car can do for you.
And if the LFP factory, the Tesla Gigafactory in Nevada, which now has LFP equipment, if that equipment begins producing LFPs, that would also introduce some cost savings there. And those batteries would, at least for as long as it persists, qualify for the manufacturer credit for the production of clean energy products in the US. Could be substantial. Do you know that Ford sold more Mustang Mach-Es than gas Mustangs in 2024?
It's a bit of a shocker, isn't it? Like the Mustang regular car has been in the stable for Ford forever. It's been a marquee car for them. And here we are, the electric crossover that many Mustang owners wouldn't call a Mustang has now surpassed it in sales.
Yeah, it's crazy. And I think it's going to, this is neat. Is this a concept? Or is that what they actually look like? It looks like that's a sticker on the hood, but maybe it's not. Oh, I guess they just overdid the gloss on it. That's just the Mustang. Don't really see Mustangs. You know what? Now that you mention it, I would say that I see fewer Mustangs than I see Mach-Es. I see Mach-Es pretty regularly.
Yep.
Interesting. I'll have to be on the lookout and see if that persists. Now we're going to get into the comments from last week. Guys, if you have a question, ask it. Even better if you start it with question, like just the word and a question mark. That way I can find it more easily.
Easier to find. Absolutely.
Easier to find. The video was about the very good and bad news about the Cybertruck, pictured here. That was, we now know more. It's still not a good thing. So it's very disappointing. Horrible situation. I suspect the BYD modus operandi in China was more build factories starting in 2010, which are easily convertible from internal combustion to EV as the technology evolves, and by doing so, make the transition fast and much cheaper. Bearing in mind that BYD were developing batteries since 94, so they were always going EV and are virtually fully integrated. Do you think that they built their internal combustion vehicle factories with an eye on these being converted to EV factories?
I don't think so. I don't think. Yeah, I think that's too. China went in on the EV, yes, 10 plus years ago, but BYD was out there performing before that too. So I think it's iteration. A company can make modifications as time goes along based on where they're heading, and they can make changes. Some of them aren't ideal, but they'll make it work. Absolutely.
I agree with all that. BYD famously has a monumentally huge employee count, which would suggest that their efficiencies are not what you would expect to see if they were planning to transition to EV as painlessly as this question suggests. And I think BYD's secret to volume is having a lower margin than Tesla and making cars that are cheaper to begin with. There are models of BYD that will never be exported because the quality is what a Chinese consumer would expect, not what a US or Australian or other international consumer might expect. There was a great report I heard on a podcast maybe a month or two ago where the reporter went to China to experience the EV revolution, hopped in this really cool 5-seat crossover SUV in a Uber situation, and asked the driver, what'd you pay for it? What do you think? And it was some car. I don't know if I'd ever heard of it. I'd certainly never seen it. I looked it up at the time, and it looks like any other crossover SUV. And it was something like $12,000 to $15,000, but it didn't have a radio. It didn't even come with a radio. It didn't have, I don't think it had air conditioning. You could be the world volume leader if you made cars at every price point, which BYD will do and Tesla will not. So I think that's their advantages. The reason their cars are so much cheaper is because the margin's lower and because the cars, on average, are not what you would expect from a base model American car in this market. Why don't they take the microphone input and produce dynamic noise canceling for road and cabin noise?
I got to believe that this is in the works down the road. I think that, again, that's an iteration of the microphone. They're looking at what actually the microphone is being used for, how it's being effective or not effective, and they'll make changes based on that. Tesla does this all the time.
Yes, and I would say that it's tricky because ambient noise comes from all directions. It is not unidirectional. A lot of cars that will have noise canceling will put the speakers right by your headrest so that it can measure the actual sound waves as they hit your head and do a better job. It's complicated. I don't know why more cars aren't doing it, but that's a physics question that goes a little bit outside of what I'm comfortable with. About using the mic to pick up sound of sirens, if the music you're listening to, or say a car insurance ad comes on and there's a sound of sirens, does the car respond to that?
Good question. That could be an effect, absolutely, because the speakers are in the back. If the siren is coming out of the back speakers, yeah, I can see it fooling the vehicle in some ways.
I would say my answer is it would fool the car the same way it would fool us. Maybe the car would start looking around more aggressively to try and find sirens, but hearing a siren is not sufficient reason to pull over. The siren has to be somewhere relevant, in front of you, behind you,
and ongoing.
Oh, unfortunate. So if we purchase our Cybertruck in 2024, are we SOL on the credit, on the IRA tax credit?
I think you are.
I think you are. I think you absolutely are. It's unfortunate, but that's how the tax law is written. Is I'm not aware of a time they've gone back and said, by the way, also here's an extra thing for last year. So unfortunate, but no, the 2024 Cybertruck did not qualify for the tax credit. The all-wheel drive and upcoming rear-wheel drive Cybertruck qualifies. If your sales or delivery center says it doesn't, you need to tell them to figure out how it does, because it does, so that you can take delivery without paying almost 10% too much. So
but you got to drive the Cybertruck for an extra month or two in front of everyone else. So that's what the positive side of it is.
That is the positive side. I was trying to tell people there is no reason the Cybertruck shouldn't qualify. I had a lot of people telling me, well, this element or that the anode comes from China, therefore it won't qualify. And I've always said that doesn't make sense to me based on the sum of my understanding lo these many years. I'm doing my best here. I'm not always right, but I had a fairly high confidence interval on that one. Yeah, interesting. How recent is this news? From your understanding, will a 24 Cybertruck qualify? No, it will not. For the used EV credit, yeah, it's just got to go way down in price. And another question of the same. So the 24 doesn't? Correct, it does not. I have seen people saying we talked about this before the show. I'm getting a lot of comments from ghost accounts, brand new accounts with no history to speak of, no videos posted, no evidence that they're real. They haven't posted comments before saying, boy, I do love EVs, but, and then they dump a bunch of nonsense on you about how the EV story is over and nobody wants them and they'll never catch on. All this fear, uncertainty, and doubt, FUD at its finest. The one I saw this week that was amazing was, well, I hope these people like their Cybertruck because now it's lost, 70% of its value. And I said, ooh, really? Because I'll go buy one if it's lost 70%. That's amazing. That's a heck of a deal. So I checked Kelley Blue Book, where I found that it really hasn't lost all that much. If you're trading it in, you're going to get hosed. Everyone does. That's the nature of trade-ins. But if you're not trading it in, if you're selling it private party or to a dealer with whom you don't have a second relationship, apparently the value's only gone down a little bit. It's barely under what it costs to get it yourself new. And then I checked Auto Trader to see, well, that's what Kelley Blue Book says. Maybe they got this one wrong. I checked Auto Trader, and there are a whole lot of Cybertrucks on the market above list price.
Wow.
Worth noting, they're not selling, but they're listed. Well, what they're looking for is somebody who wanders in and wants one right now. And we can negotiate, but the number we're starting from is above what it would cost to get it from Tesla.
Speaking of Cybertrucks, I took one out for a road test last couple of weeks just before the holidays, and I came in, I checked in, I had a certain time to drive it. The representative of Tesla said it's coming back; it should be here any moment. And then half an hour later, they came over to me and said, "Yeah, the person that was last out on their test drive, they bought the truck while they were in the truck, so we can't let you drive somebody else's truck now." So,
did you get your test drive?
I did. I waited another half hour, and we got another truck to drive. But it was interesting to see that someone on a test drive pulled out their app and they bought the truck as they were on the test drive.
That's hilarious. That's an unusual experience. By the way, if you're test driving another vehicle and you're on the test drive, do not say out loud to the salesman, "I'll take it," because that just gave them the license to charge you all the money in the world, and they will. So yeah, it's a little safer with Tesla because there's no nonsense. When I applied for my loan through Tesla, it said your rate's going to be, and I don't remember, 6.5%, 7%, whatever it was. And I thought, and it said, but this is pending. It may come back different. And I thought, yeah, of course, this is their preliminary. They're going to see if they can find the right financing for it. And I thought, boy, what's going to happen is if it comes back lower, they'll keep the difference. And if it comes back higher, they'll increase it. And 2 days later, your loan's been approved. It is lower. I'm like, you passed it on? You passed on the savings instead of taking it as a premium on the back end?
Yep.
Amazing.
That's
amazing.
Great.
That is how you earn my loyalty. So, alrighty, guys, what did we miss? What did we misunderstand? Oh, it's taken forever. It's so long. I apologize for the length of these videos, but sometimes we just got to get through it. And it's been too long since I've chatted with Mark, and I just get lonely. Everybody else, like, subscribe. Please do subscribe. I'm really trying to hit 100,000 this year. This is my year. I can just feel it in several of my bones. It might just be the cold weather coming because I do have an injury, but we'll find out. And yeah, we'll see what happens. Like, subscribe. Stay tuned. Stay juicy and leave your questions for next week because I cannot wait to hear from you clever robots in the comments below.